On December 17, 1944, two German soldiers lined up at least 9 US prisoners of war in the town of Ligneuville, Belgium. The Battle of the Bulge had just begun. One by one, the German soldiers held a pistol against the heads of the American prisoners, shooting each man in the head. The last man in line was Joseph P. Maas, who did not realize what was going on until the third man in line was shot. When one of the German soldiers eventually came to him, he was grabbed by his clothes, and a pistol was held against the back of his neck. Private Maas was so frightened that he attempted to brace himself and jerked about the same time that the German soldier fired his pistol. Everyone lay motionless on the ground. The Battle of the Bulge was the German counter-offensive against American lines in the Ardennes sector in Belgium and Luxembourg. The offensive started on December 16, 1944 and was intended to stop the Allied use of the Belgian port of Antwerp and to split the Allied lines, allowing the Germans to encircle and destroy 4 Allied armies and force the Western Allies to negotiate a peace treaty in the Axis powers' favor. Stubborn resistance from American troops all over the Ardennes front and a quick reaction by both British and American troops halted the advance. As a result, it formed a bulge in the Allied front lines. On December 17, when the German advance was still gaining momentum, the battle group of SS Standartenführer Joachim Peiper of the 1st SS Panzer Division, known as Hitler's personal bodyguard, entered the town of Ligneuville. Earlier that day, the SS troops of this unit opened fire on a group of American prisoners near a crossroad at the hamlet of Bagnères, southeast of Malmedy. This event became known as the Malmedy massacre. Ligneuville was only 2.5 miles south of the crossroads. To better understand the massacre that took place here, I team up with battlefield researcher Bob Konings. Together, we dive into the story of the American troops who stood face to face with the German spearhead in Ligneuville.
So here we have a picture of the tank that was knocked out, the tank of Arndt Fischer, in front of the Hotel des Ardennes.
Where is it?
It's right in front of us. So we're on the 17th of December 1944. When Corporal Peiper is arriving in the little town of Ligneuville, also known as Engelsdorf. The first Panther tank is manned by Sternebeck, arriving at the bridge of the Amblève River. And behind him he has 2 SPWs with infantry. And behind that one is the Panther tank of Arndt Fischer arriving. Coming from around the corner between the church and Hotel du Moulin. And when coming around the corner, he's hit in the back by a tank dozer, gets knocked out. Arndt Fischer is wounded really badly, and his crew also. I believe some of the guys died in the incident, and because of this incident, the SPWs behind it, manned by Joseph Diefenthal and Joachim Peiper, they are trying to get as quickly as possible behind that church to get out of the line of fire, and Peiper presumably is getting out of the SPW with a bazooka, and he's hiding in one of the farms behind the church, aiming for the tank dozer. Well, one of the other crews is taking care of the dozer, and from here several men are being taken prisoner of war and are marched off to the Hotel du Moulin.
The American troops in Ligneuville were members of the 9th Armored Division and were caught by surprise when Joachim Peiper's SS troops entered the village. After a short battle, about 24 American soldiers were taken prisoner. What caused the SS troops to shoot some of them remains unclear. So, the bodies were not discovered until January 1945, when the town was liberated by the 30th Infantry Division. And a guy named John Floria, a photographer from Life magazine, was in the area when the crime was reported, and he took photographs of the bodies and the civilians in this area who were assisting the Americans.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very interesting case for us to look at. as we are researching the story.
These are two pictures with the research team. There's a couple of men extra visible, and the victims of the massacre. And when you look over it, you can see in the distance the house visible with the annex, modernized now, but it's already there.
The 8 bodies were found and examined. To the Americans, it was clear that these men had been executed with gunshot entry wounds in the face. An eyewitness by the name of Maria Lochen lived across the street and saw the whole event unfold.
On the afternoon of December 17th, 1944, I saw some German soldiers march a group of 24 American prisoners down the hill north of my home. 8 of the Americans were lined up in front of 2 German soldiers dressed in black uniforms. They marched the 8 prisoners to the south side of the road. At this time, one of the 2 German soldiers took his pistol and shot each of the 8 Americans in the head. I witnessed the shooting of those 8 American soldiers from the side of my house, which was approximately 25 or 30 yards from the spot where the shooting took place.
It appeared that throughout the path of the 1st SS Panzer Division, American troops and Belgian civilians had been brutally murdered. The cases were all included in the Malmedy trials that, despite its name, included all murders by the 1st SS Panzer Division outside the Malmedy area. The investigations and hearings of former SS members resulted in 2 suspects for the murders of the 8 American prisoners at Ligneuville.
From the 1st May 1933 until the 8th month 44, a member of the WWII, Paul Hermann Ochmann.
State your full name.
Nennen Sie Ihren vollen Namen. Paul Hermann Ochmann, O-C-H-M-A-N-N.
Hauptscharführer, sergeant or non-commissioned officer, Paul Ochmann was the key suspect and eventually, under oath, confessed to having killed 8 American prisoners, together with Gerard Suess in Ligneuville, Belgium.
I said to Sturman Suess he should come with me. The 8 prisoners were to be shot. Together with Suess, I led the prisoners past the SPW of Untersturmführer Hering, over to the other side of the road. In the vicinity of the cemetery, at a place where the terrain descends on the right of the street, I stopped the prisoners. I then indicated to the prisoners with my hand that they should place themselves with their backs towards me and therefore with the face towards the slope, as I intended to kill them by a shot in the neck, and I know that by a shot in the neck, the victim falls forward. Thereupon, I first shot the first American prisoner of war into the neck from a distance of about 20 centimeters. The American was doubtlessly dead. From the motion he made, I saw that he was hit in the neck and he fell forward. Then again with my pistol, I shot the second American prisoner of war in the same manner from a distance of about 20 centimeters. All told, I myself shot and killed with my pistol in this manner 4 or 5 of these American prisoners of war. The others were shot in my presence by Sturman Suess of the 9th Panzer Pioneer Company. While I shot, Suess also shot, and after I shot 4 or 5, the others were already shot by Suess. About 500 meters north of the place where I and Sturman Suess shot the prisoners, stood another 8 prisoners of war. I brought these prisoners into a hotel located in the village, because I was of the opinion that enough prisoners of war were already bumped off.
The other remaining prisoners of the 9th Armored Division had been marched off to Hotel du Moulin, just down the road in Ligneuville. The Americans here had been under command of Captain Seymour Green. In his statement, he mentioned that he was interred at the hotel for 3 days before finally being moved. The hotel was owned by Peter Roop, who lived there with his wife and daughter. It was through his daughter that Captain Green learned about the massacre. Alright, we're here in the backyard of Hotel du Moulin, which was owned by Peter Roop. And what is kind of interesting is that He is often used as a witness of the massacre, the killings at Ligneuville, but his statement was not officially added to the war crimes case file.
No, it is interesting, but also interesting to mention him in the story, because according to him, he was standing in the kitchen,
Right.
looking out the window right after the fighting, and he sees those 8 Americans being marched up in the street, and also he saw the killing. And what's interesting for us is that he's the one mentioning that the prisoners of war were facing Paul Ochman while he killed his prisoners of war.
Right, and they were shot in the face. That's what he said in the earliest version of his story that we were able to find, which was in 1949.
Yeah.
In an American newspaper.
Yeah.
But we are quite sure that he did see other prisoners of war.
Yeah.
The guys from the 9th Armored Division that were in this town, because, I mean, the 8 that were killed were over there, but there were like 16 others that were marched off down the road into the hotel, into the backyard of the hotel where we're currently standing.
Yeah.
And these guys all survived.
Yeah. And that's also stated by Paul Ochman himself, that he marched off. If I believe he said in a statement that they bumped off enough prisoners of war by then, so he marched them off and brought them into the hotel. Yes.
Wow. Peter Roop then continued to tell his story, and it was widely spread in John Toland's book about the Battle of the Bulge. The author even interviewed him personally. When the German troops entered the hotel, Peter seemed to have shouted, "Murderer! You killed 8 of them! I saw you put the pistol in their mouths." The German sergeant then punched him in the jaw, and a German officer approached and ordered for the rest of the Americans to be shot, including Peter Roop. Now luckily, a second officer appeared and stopped the whole thing from happening. "Sergeant, put these men in that room and treat them how you want the armies to treat you." However, Peter Roop's testimony was not used in court, nor did he testify. So apparently, one man survived the whole thing here.
Yeah.
His name was Corporal Joseph P. Moss. And on May 20th, 1945, he filed an official statement, or filled in an official form of a war crime that he witnessed.
Yeah.
He had been in several prisoner of war camps because he was taken prisoner of war.
Yeah.
But his written statement is as follows. About 1400 hours, 2 p.m. on December 17 in the St. Vith area, he was part of Service Company 27th Armored Infantry Battalion, 9th Armored Division. They were attacked by a strong and large German armored column. After about 2 hours of battling, we had to surrender. In my particular group, there were 10 of us, including myself, who, after being searched, were lined up and shot in the back of our necks by a young German officer with a pistol. 5 of the men shot were members of my company, and their names were First Sergeant Paige Schenk, Staff Sergeant Joseph Collins, Technician Grade 5 Borchina, Private Carter, Private Penny. The other 4 were members of the 14th Tank Battalion.
Yeah.
And I did not know them. Unless a miracle happened, as was in my case, these men died instantly. And when I left them, they were lying there motionless.
Wow.
Such a powerful statement.
Absolutely. Yeah. He survived.
He survived, actually.
He survived this scene. Yeah. Incredible.
In a later statement, Joseph Maas explained that the bullet entered the side of his neck and came out the other side. He remained on the ground with right arm and right side partially paralyzed. After 4 hours, he was able to get up. None of the others had moved by then. Private Maas was recaptured after nightfall and sent to a POW hospital. So, here we have a first-person account of the massacre that matches the story to most extent, except that according to Corporal Maas and Paul Ochman, a pistol was held against the neck of the prisoners. This is contrary to the medical examination report and the account of the hotel owner that say that the men were shot in the face. And, according to Corporal Maas, 10 people were lined up and shot. With Maas leaving the scene, that would mean we would have 9 bodies, but we have 8. That is because First Sergeant Paige Schenk, who, according to Maas, was lined up with the other men, was not found among the murdered prisoners. His burial file stated that he was killed by shrapnel fragments in the back. Despite his traumatic experience, Joseph Maas never testified in court, nor was his statement used during the trials. With Paul Ochman's confession, it may seem like a clear case. He and Gerhard Süss killed these men. However, Süss was never heard for the investigations. It seems like he vanished without a trace after the Battle of the Bulge. Besides, Paul Ochman and the other prisoners later claimed to have been beaten and threatened during their interrogation while being in a room without heat and low on rations. Paul Ochman and 42 other SS soldiers were sentenced to death by hanging for their involvement in the massacres, including Joachim Peiper. These death sentences were later changed to lifelong imprisonment, and by the 1950s, due to political pressure and Cold War tensions, all cases were commuted. How the 8 Americans were exactly murdered remains unclear. But to make sure that the 8 men were not forgotten, Peter Roop, the hotel owner, erected a monument next to his hotel in Ligneuville.